Welcome to Candid Conversations. What are self-advocacy skills for a successful transition? This is brought to you by the New York Region 1 Parent Training and Information Center Collaborative, which is made up of Advocates for Children of New York, INCLUDEnyc, Long Island Advocacy Center, and Sinergia, with support from New York DeafBlind Collaborative, Chinese America Planning Council, and the Community Inclusion and Development Alliance. Parent centers can provide free information, trainings, and workshops on a variety of education-related topics to parents and students with disabilities, as well as professionals. All of their contact information will be provided to you in the resources that will be shared with you after tonight's panel discussion. My name is Mary Beth Berggren. I'm a school-age family educator at INCLUDEnyc. As a mother of 2 children with diverse needs, I'm really excited to be here with you tonight as we explore some amazing tips and resources on transition to help support self-advocacy. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have an exceptional panel of experts who are here to speak with you about these opportunities and answer questions about the possibilities available for you and your child. Tonight, we have with us Catherine Stanzoni, Special Education Trainer Specialist from the Special Education Office of the Regional Partnership Center, Staten Island, and Supervisor of Pre-Employment Transition Services for Staten Island. We have Christina Silva Soto, Director of Family and Member Engagement at Tri-County Care, CCO. We have Jonathan Santiago, Executive Director of Transition and College Access Centers, Division of Specialized Instruction and Student Support, Special Education Office of the New York City Department of Education. We have Patricia Calandra, Master Housing Navigator for Office of People with Developmental Disabilities, Long Island Region 5, under the New York Housing Resource Center at New York Alliance for Inclusion and Innovation. And lastly, we have Ann DeAngelis, Program Coordinator of Mental Health Services, Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York. A huge thank you to all our panelists for taking the time to share their expertise with us this evening. Just before we get started, I wanted to remind you of some of the housekeeping tips to make your experience seamless. As JC mentioned, our staff will be monitoring the chat to provide technical support and assistance. As you hear from our panel of experts, I'm sure there'll be tons of questions, so please note that the Q&A portion of the event will follow our last speaker. You can submit your questions via the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen throughout the evening, and we'll do our best to answer them throughout that segment. If we do not get to your question, we'll make sure to follow up with the answers after the event. Lastly, at the end of the evening, there'll be a brief Zoom poll asking for your feedback, as it's very important to us. So be sure to stay on to complete that poll before logging off. With that said, I'd love to start our conversation with a meet and greet of our amazing panel, starting with Ann, Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York. Ann?
Thank you so much, Mary Beth. So like she said, my name is Ann DeAngelis, and I'm with the Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York, Sydney, CIDNY. I'm Program Coordinator of Mental Health Services, where we are starting to bring in more mental health services into the disability community. I feel like this was a gap in our services that we provided at Sydney, and I'm very excited to be able to build this program up. This is a new program where we hope to involve more mental health services into the disability community, getting more access to services, mental health services that is, and access to support, whether that's groups, individual counseling, and trainings for professionals. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Next, we have Trish, New York Alliance.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Trish Calandra. I am working through a grant from the New York Alliance, who is sponsored by the Developmental Disabilities Planning Council, who then in turn has created the New York Housing Resource Center, which is a clearinghouse of information for families and parents, anyone interested in creating housing for people with disabilities And some of the work through that grant is to educate families. We are on year 5 of our grant, to help people, families, educating them on the housing opportunities, and then also thinking outside the box and working with builders, developers, people, housing stakeholders to create housing. Specifically, my region is Long Island, but I work with folks from across the state in all the OPWDD regions. So if you need help in Manhattan or you need help in upstate, I have a resource for you there. I'm also a self-direction broker, supporting a caseload of families to access self-direction services. I'm what they call a housing navigator, as well as a mom of 2 young people who are 28 and 31, living independently in the community, both with autism.
Thank you so much, Trish. And Jonathan from the TCAC. Jonathan?
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Jonathan Santiago, and I'm the Executive Director of the Transitioning College Access Centers at the Central Special Education Office, New York City Department of Education. It is a great privilege and pleasure and honor to be here. And I know that we're going to have a lot of great information for you. The Transitioning College Access Centers, or TCACs for short, are resource hubs for students with disabilities throughout the 5 boroughs that exist to assist students and families and schools with the transition process for students and helping students to be ready for post-secondary excellence. Some of our initiatives include work-based learning programs, internships, workshops for parents, students, and schools as well. We're part of the SYAP program. We have work-based learning programs such as TOP and Seed TOP. We're also lead the pre-ETS program work throughout the 5 boroughs for the New York City Department of Education. So we're very happy to be here and to be able to share some information of the things that we do at the Central Special Education Office and TCACs. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Christina Silva Soto from Tri-County.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Silva Soto, and I am the Director of Member and Family Engagement at Tri-County Care. We are a CCO, Care Coordination Organization. We help you through the process to navigate the eligibility determination for your loved one. And we also provide the service of care management when someone is ready to be enrolled. And the care manager will coordinate care for you. They will connect you to the services, the HCBS waiver services. And the mission of OPWDD is that, or their vision, I should say, is that people with developmental disabilities enjoy meaningful relationships with friends, family, and others in their lives, and that they experience personal health and growth and live in the home of their choice and fully participate in their community. I not only help guide families through this process, but I also navigate this for my own son, who is 8 and has autism. I'm very happy to be here tonight.
Thank you so much, Christina. And last but not least, Katie Stanzoni from the RPC.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm Catherine Stanzoni. Everyone will be probably referring to me as Katie, so that's fine. And I'm a special education trainer specialist with the Regional Partnership Center, which there is one of in every borough as well as every region of New York State. It's basically a contract between, or a relationship between, a partnership, NYSED's Office of Special Education and the Special Education Office of the NYC DOE. One of my roles there is to provide professional training to school staff around all the areas of special education. And another aspect of the work that I do is to collaborate with the Family and Community Engagement Center, which is include New York City, and provide family trainings on all aspects of special education process as well. I also happen to work with Jonathan for pre-employment transition services through the TCAC in Staten Island, because I supervise those services for Staten Island. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited for today.
Thank you all so much. And I'm excited to get started with our first question regarding hopes and dreams. So our first question for today is, what advice can you give to support self-advocates in their pursuit of independence in the areas of living, learning, earning, and social emotional well-being? And we're going to start with Trish on the area of living. Trish? Trish, you're muted.
Thank you for that. Sorry about that. So the best advice I can give to participants and family is to start to practice every day, right? So make a list of your independent living goals and then start with 1 or 2 at a time, because you can make yourself quite the list, but you should definitely prioritize towards where you can build towards success and not overwhelm yourself. So, definitely don't work on everything at the same time. And this could be as simple as learning to start setting an alarm to wake yourself up in the morning, planning and making your own breakfast, meals, prepare for transportation, laundry. Setting small, achievable goals that will lead to future independence is always important. And you can start it at any age, right? Accept help in the beginning as you work through your goals. Where do you see yourself in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years? And parents, you should definitely have goals for yourself too. And one of the biggest things as I've gone through this process with families is learning to start letting go and taking the risks, right? We call it risks, and risk can equal reward, or as we say, dignity of risk. For some parents, that could be leaving your loved one home alone for the first time and starting with small amounts of time. And build up to longer periods of time. Technology can help you through that. You can use your camera if you have camera systems in your home, or FaceTime. All mainstream technology can be used, echo shadows, ring doorbells. The list these days is endless of what you can use to assist you, or you can even just be outside down the block in your car as you practice these little things. But give your loved one the ability to take a risk.
Thank you so much. We're just going to pause a brief second for the switch in ASL interpretation. Next, we're going to move on to Jonathan and Katie on the area of learning.
Sure, I'll start us off. Really, my advice for self-advocacy in the pursuit of independence in the area of learning, it's going to look different based on every student, their preferences, their needs, and their comfort level. But really, my biggest piece of advice would be to take an active role in decisions that are being made about you as early as possible. You don't have to wait until students are quote unquote transition age, because birth is transition age. Everything is a transition. So being included in their IEP meeting, whether they're present at the meeting, or I know one of the parents in the video was even talking about what works for their child, so maybe talking to them about what type of learner are you? What's working for you in your classroom? What are the teachers doing that you find really helps you? What do you find that isn't helping you that you want me to let the team know when we're meeting? So that you have a say and you're more comfortable with that. It's not going to be as intimidating as you get older. Those opportunities for practice and rehearsal are everything. So that really is my biggest piece of advice. And for families also, when you're advocating for your child, and things that you might think are going to help your child, talk to them about what you're advocating for, because they might not want that. We see all the time for testing accommodations when we're talking about those, the students refusing to use it, but the parent doesn't want to take it off the IP because it could help. And the student doesn't want it, so it could help, but the student doesn't want to use it. So if we can find a happy medium to address that area of need that the student is comfortable with, then everyone is winning there, right? So talking to your child and really having them be a part of what you're advocating for.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off a little bit of what Katie said, so self-advocacy and increased independence in the area of learning for students. of all ages, right? Can look very similar to what Katie just described, but it can also focus on student choice, also in what courses students are taking, right? Such as, for example, electives in middle and high school. Also, it's very important to engage students in conversations, right, about their related services, and also student voice, right? We also want to make sure that student voice is involved in the conversation as well. And when considering post-secondary transition, next steps, it's very important to expose students to all of the post-secondary options that are out there. And making sure that not only are they exposed to educational programs, but also to other post-secondary programs that can be of great support. Also, looking at specific workshops, for example, the TCACs, the Transition College Access Centers. We do have student-facing workshops that are related to self-advocacy and independence. So exposing students and your child to every single possible workshop and piece of information when it comes to post-secondary readiness and also to independence is very important at all ages. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan and Katie. And now we'll talk to Christina regarding earning. Christina?
Hi, thanks. So I'm going to discuss self-direction a little bit. Self-direction empowers individuals with developmental disabilities to determine a mix of supports and services that work best for their needs. Self-direction gives individuals and families greater control over the services they receive, how they receive them, and who provides them. The control allows the individual to decide who provides his or her services, when those services are delivered, and what assistance he or she may need. The flexibility enables the individual to purchase the supports and services they need, and the independence helps the individual maintain their independence at home and in their community. A lot of people don't know that having Medicaid doesn't mean you can't have a job or you can't be out in the community participating in certain types of activities. There is something called the Medicaid buy-in program for working people with disabilities. You also have the option of the self-direction budget, which helps to provide some financial support in regards to housing subsidies, utilities, clothing, internet and phone service. You have those additional supports such as day-hab services, com-hab services, employment services, supportive employment. These are just some of the things that the OPWDD waiver program helps provide to help support our loved ones so that they can become more independent in the community.
Thank you so much, Christina. And last, Anne, when we talk about social and emotional well-being, what is some of your advice?
So with living, learning, earning, and everything else, there's always going to be that emotional and social aspect. There is a metaphor that I like to use where every day when you wake up, you're provided a certain amount of spoons. And throughout that day, you're handing your spoons out to everyone you see. Maybe it's your child, maybe it's someone at your job, maybe it's someone who's just needing that support, maybe a friend. And at the end of the day, a lot of people don't have a spoon to eat their soup for dinner. So it's about finding ways to keep at least one spoon for yourself throughout the day. This is through support systems, adult friends for parents, and just finding ways through coping. And every person has a different coping mechanism. So your coping mechanism might be very different than your child's coping mechanism per se. So it's about finding what works for you and also finding an outlet for this emotional support. Everyone deserves that emotional support. Another metaphor that I love to use is that you need to put your oxygen mask on before you can put someone else's on. So if anyone's been on a plane, you hear that all the time, and it's really pertinent in our everyday, especially if you're caretaking for a student who is going through a very major transition. You need the support too as a parent. And as Patricia was saying earlier, there's a whole bunch of risks that we are taking. And with all risks, there might be some anxiety, and it's important to be able to have that emotional outlet for that anxiety and not just bottle it up because you have to hand out spoons all day. So that's my little piece of making sure that there is a little bit for yourself at the end of the day.
Thank you all so much. We're going to move into our second section on independence and advocacy. And I want to discuss self-advocacy skills that will support families and self-advocates themselves and how they can be best prepared. So firstly, I'd like to talk about tips for supporting self-advocates as they navigate the world outside of the structured educational environment in regards to IEPs, CSE support for school age skills. And I'll turn that over to Katie and Jonathan.
Thanks, Mary Beth. So again, just strongly encouraging that we're trying to ensure student voice at the IEP meeting, even if the student isn't physically attending the meeting. Students don't need to be 15 to be a part of their meeting. That's when they have to, the year they're turning 15 is when they have to be invited. But parents can certainly state that they want their child to attend that meeting earlier and ask that the school brings them downstairs to attend the meeting if it's in person, or they have them as part of the conversation if it's via telephone or electronically happening. So there are some tools that are in the resources that you're going to get that you can use prior to the meeting or even at the meeting, that they're aligned to the different sections of the IEP. So to the academic, social, and physical needs sections, where the student will have an opportunity to reflect on those areas and really think about what they would like to have support in. What is, like I said earlier, working for them that they want to make sure the teachers are continuing to do. What strategies are helping, if they're using assistive technology and that's helping, again, fostering independence. Parents, there's a parent version of that form too. Parents and children and their students can work together on completing those, for looking for alignment. The things that we're advocating for our children can match what our children are advocating for themselves. And again, it's just building more opportunity to have an active role in your IEP meeting so that it is less daunting or intimidating. I remember in the documentary, a lot of parents said that their children were hesitant to be a part of it. It's overwhelming. It's anxiety inducing, and parents sometimes feel that same way too. Mary Beth and I do some trainings, and that's some of the feedback that parents are giving. So we give them those surveys that we included so it can help them bring it to the meeting. And you can look at that to, have a speaking point to remember, oh, this is what I wanted to mention. I was nervous in the moment, but it's right here for me. So tools like that'll just help us to continue being a part of the conversation and have our students be a part of the decision-making about themselves through increased structured opportunities.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie. And so just to piggyback of what Katie said, very important for there to be student voice, right, within the IEP meetings, but also to look at the different resources and the different workshops that are out there to help assist not only students, but families as well to prepare for the IEP meetings. Once again, Katie and I work very closely together at the Department of Education. And so when it comes to student-facing and family-facing workshops regarding preparing for the IEP or even breaking down the IEP, right? Our offices have workshops that for students, for families, for schools that will support and also will discuss student voice. Also looking at the tools that the Department of Education has, our Office of Special Education. So we do have a family guide to transition that's both online and also like a book or live version, as they say, that it also outlines the process for families, the IEP process, but also includes sample vocational assessments. And this is a great tool that can help parents and students become familiar with vocational assessments and also with components of the IEP and transition in general. It also helps prepare our students for post-secondary living, learning, and earning. And can also, create great conversations that parents can have with their child and discuss when it comes to transition planning and post-secondary readiness. So that, as Katie mentioned, some of that fear and anxiety, right, can be leveled back because there is, and we recognize fear and anxiety when it comes to transition planning. And so we I would definitely, recommend for parents to look at the different resources and the different things that our office and all of our partners that are on this call that we offer, because we do work together at the end of the day, right, we work together to help students with disabilities prepare for success in school and after school. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Now I'm going to turn it over to Christina to share some information on how self-advocates and families can be supported in this area.
Hi. So through self-direction, as a parent myself, my biggest fear is what is going to happen to my son if I was no longer here. Where is he going to live? Who's going to take care of him? Will he be able to do anything for himself? And so it's very important for us, as early as possible, to start to connect them to these other resources that will help to support them when we're not here, or even when we are here. There are certain things through the self-direction budget that will help to take some of that load off of our minds, whether it be a day program for them to attend once they transition out of school, whether it be a roommate to live with them so that they can live outside of our home and live their life to the fullest, the way that they want to. There are also community classes that they can take if there's things that they enjoy doing, cooking, yoga. I must tell you, there are so many individuals that live such fulfilled lives because of the self-direction. It really does allow you to choose what you want to do. And it doesn't have to be all at the expense of the parents. And by that, I mean not just financially, I mean mentally, physically. There are these resources that will help to support our loved ones. There's something called a paid neighbor, live-in caregivers. There are many individuals who live out in our community with these supports through self-direction. And I mean, they couldn't be happier. I must tell you, whenever I'm out in the community and I have these conversations, these really important conversations with these individuals and their families, it is so relieving to them to know that their loved ones are being taken care of. You know, we talk about respite all the time, relief to the caregiver. I mean, I'm here to tell you as a parent, it can be exhausting. It's exhausting now at a young age. I can't imagine what's going to happen, you know, when they start to have more of this voice, right? We talk about them wanting to be part of something. So as they mentioned, you know, when they turn 15, getting in that IEP meeting, or when they tell you they don't want to do something anymore, when they turn 18 and now they have their own voice, they're adults. So they're choosing and they're advocating for themselves. So what I'm here to say is that we have to listen, because it's, and I know people say, well, what if the parents' biggest concern is, what if they don't agree with what I want? What if their idea is different? Well, then that's what it is, and you have to come to that happy medium. It's really important that they do have a voice and that we are listening. And while yes, as parents, we think we know, and we are looking out for them, because it can be a very cruel world, but we do have to listen, and we do have to take all of this and put it, we have to just put it here and just step away. And if we have these additional supports, whether it be, like I said, a staff, ComHab staff, or respite staff, your circle of support, which I know we're going to get into, we need to, as parents, really step back a little bit sometimes and just let things kind of happen. So I would just say here, self-direction has been a blessing for our family, and I saw a tremendous amount of growth in my own child within the first 6 months of having it. So as I see these other families and I check in with them, I see how much it's changed their lives also. And I know someone else is going to talk about housing, so I won't get too much into that, but there are options that, people are not aware of through this self-direction budget. So I really encourage families to take that info session and really, dive in to see what it's about, because these services are life-changing.
Thank you so much, Christina. Before we move on, we're just going to take a quick pause for a change in ASL interpretation. Great, thank you so much. Now we're going to turn it over to Trish and Ann to speak about outside organizations and independent living centers.
And I think I'll jump in first because I'm going to piggyback on the self-direction a little bit. So since I do primarily work in self-direction, and that is the sort of mechanism that gets me to assist people who are either 18 or some are more primarily 21 and over when they're looking for housing and those services. And a lot of people refer to it as the service cliff, but it does not have to be a service cliff. One of the biggest things I can tell people is to get yourself into that OPWDD system as early as possible. And when you're at your IEP meetings, invite your self-direction broker or care manager to those meetings, because you should be operating as a full circle of support, even at the youngest of ages, so that whatever the school may be working on, you can also work in self-direction. So you're fully supporting the person as a circle. Self-direction is a wonderful program that can help you live independently with supports of staff, possibly like you mentioned earlier, the living caregiver, paid neighbors, and the housing subsidy, which can alleviate, for the financial burden that comes with all of this. But you also should be looking at your SSI eligibility, your Medicare if you need it for health. And then we also have trade regional centers, and that's technology related assistance for individuals with disabilities. Here on Long Island, it's Silo. There's a center in every part of the state. And what they do is they help provide device loans and hands-on training to people with disabilities, so that you can try maybe products out to see if it works for you before you go and purchase something. So it's a great program that can help people with access to those types of technology as well. I'm a big technology person. My kids who live independently now, like I said, they live together in an apartment, well, a condo, and we use the services of technology as well as Paid Neighbor. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. My daughter came from a group home model from residential from 16. So, self-direction was really the better service for her. Getting your loved ones into the front door is really the best and great starting point for everybody. Then there's also CDPAP services that you could look into as well. For those who may need more personal assistance, I liken CDPAP as a do for mechanism of funding, and self-direction is a habilitative learning service. So some people may need both at the same time, so you can access that as well. And then engaging families should engage with financial planners who specialize in this, and special needs attorneys who do long-term planning and sustainable opportunity and solutions for people. Because as someone ages, and again, when we talk about what happens when I'm gone, these people will be instrumental in helping you plan for that. Self-direction, unfortunately, sometimes I say went from A to C and they really didn't go to Z, to help people prepare for what happens when I'm gone. So it is left up to families to sort of figure some of that maze out as self-direction has grown exponentially. I don't think people realized how well it was taking off. So it wasn't really thought of all the way. OPWDD is working on that through their 507 plan. So we do have some solutions coming through. And then in my links, I have New York Housing Resource Center, and there is a book called What Happens When I'm Gone. If you're not a reader, we do have some other mediums that can help you get through that book. But it is a great starting point, and take it chapter by chapter to figure out best ways to support your loved ones too. Thank you.
So at the Center for Independence of the Disabled, we have so many services available. But we really aim for full integration and removal of all barriers. So we do have a youth transition program. And also, I believe that it would be helpful for a lot of people to look into our Consumer Action Network. So this is so people with disabilities and allies can advocate for disability rights and really start in that advocating sector. So we can start to build a network of people who can speak on behalf and speak for themselves. So in preparing for a transition, there are so many services at Sydney that should be kind of looked at, whether it's housing or through long-term care or any other kind of sector of this. So this isn't as much my specialty, but it's because I'm more into the mental health sector. But Sydney has so many services that I really urge you all to reach out towards Sydney. What I would say from the mental health sector is advocating gets tiring, and making sure that you're advocating for yourself and for your kids, and also making sure that you continue that inside of yourself. So hearing what you need and providing that for yourself. Advocating gets tiring, as a lot of people don't hear you at first and they aren't listening at first. So using skills such as there's a DBT skill called Dear Man. So this is a way of getting your point across. This is describing and through without the emotion, and then adding into what your needs are, and making sure when you negotiate, you're not wavering on any of your actual needs. And then also, I believe Patricia had said before, is making obtainable goals. So SMART goals. These are specific, measurable, attainable, and time-bound goals, so that you have a structure into making these goals and you don't get lost into all the things where there's anxiety and depression, and making sure that you have that support for yourself. So Sydney has a lot of services, and we can also get you connected to our wellness service calls. So our wellness calls are ways for our consumers to be reached and supported through those hard times. So our wellness calls will call you once a month, twice a month, and say, hey, how are you doing? Let's talk. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for that great advice. Our next question is, what advice can you give to self-advocates and their families in finding resources and support when language or cultural barriers may limit their ability? And I'm going to turn that over to Jonathan or Anne, if you want to take that question.
Sure, so I'll go. So just looking at the different services that are provided from the New York City Department of Education regarding language barriers. So a great way to self-advocate for families of students with disabilities and help find resources and support when language is a barrier. One of the things that parents can do is request translation services at all school meetings. So this is available to parents. Parents can request translation services in all school meetings. Each NYC DOE school also has a designated language access coordinator or a point person that parents can connect with to alert them that there's specific translation barriers, or that documents need to be translated in a different language. So there are those services that are provided by the New York City Department of Education, not only at the central level, but also at the school level as well. Just very important to know. It's the parents' right, the students' right to be able to have these services. So it's important for parents to be aware of these services. The Department of Education also has a language access policy and translation and interpretation unit that schools can connect with to provide these supports. So there's supports for parents at the central and at the school level, and schools also have support from the central level regarding interpretation of documents in language and translators, so that we can make sure that these barriers do not exist when families are looking for support and services.
In addition, the Center for Independence of the Disabled has the use of a language line. So through any of our wellness calls or any other services that you would be receiving through Sydney, we can provide that language line to have a language that you feel most comfortable in. So if you are using English and it is your second language and it is not comfortable for you, it is important to request that language line so you can get your point across in the language that is most comfortable.
Thank you both. We're going to move into advice for parents and families on disclosing or discussing their child's disability with them. And this came up in the video quite often. The first point, helping them to join their IEP meeting. So Katie or Jonathan, if you have any tips for helping families on disclosing or discussing their child's disability to help them join into their IEP meetings.
Sure, thank you. So again, I would encourage parents and guardians to have your student attend their IEP meeting, even in elementary school. And if you're not comfortable with them attending, I would again suggest utilizing some of the surveys that I talked about that are included in your resources for today. And if they're not going to attend the IEP meeting, if students are not going to attend their IEP meeting, another suggestion that I have, even for families, parents, and guardians, is to discuss the actual IEP with your child. So even if it's in elementary school and you don't want them coming to the meeting, go through the IEP section by section, highlight all of their strengths for them, all the things that their teachers are saying they're doing really well in, and then go through some of the areas of need and ask, what are some things that you think the teachers can do to help support you here in this area? How do you think it's affecting you? Is there something that you think they could do differently that might work better and that you're more comfortable with? Again, so we're building up that voice. And when they do feel comfortable to participate, they have more of an idea of what that participation would look like, what that conversation would look like. Even in terms of the general question about discussing your child's disability with them, no disability affects any two students in the same exact way anyway. So really that conversation that we can engage in is really about what are the areas that you might need support in, and what are the different tools and accommodations or teaching strategies that teachers or related service providers are going to be able to use to address those needs for you in a way that works for you.
Yeah, and definitely don't want to be repetitive with all of the great points that Katie made. Absolutely, student voice, right? And we touched upon this, and including students as early as possible, being part of the IEP meetings, but also the decision-making about support and services that they're receiving, I think is a great way to include students. So I think the more opportunities that are created with the students by the parents to discuss their strengths and their course of needs and what next steps are, I think leads to greater understanding for the students and more buy-in regarding, the services that they are that they're going to receive, so that they know exactly what's happening with their educational program. Also, I think it's very important that students are self-aware and understand. So once students are self-aware and understand exactly what are the different components of the IEP, it makes them really truly advocate for themselves, because they have all of the information that they need to make informed decisions and to really self-advocate for themselves, right? Even if we think about ourselves, we can't self-advocate for ourselves, right? If we don't have all of the necessary information or know everything about us, right? So for our students and children, it's very important that they are part of these meetings as early as possible, and that they truly have a great understanding so that they can prepare for post-secondary readiness, but also have meaningful participation in the meeting, but also in all facets of their lives. So I think that that's a very important point, and I think that it can lead to success for our students with IEPs. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm just going to pause briefly for change in interpretation. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Anne for emotional support.
So in including your child in these meetings, it's very important to explain to them and be with them. It's difficult to keep things from your child, especially if they're a major part of it. It's important for them to have their voice as well, and to support them in that. If your child is left in the dark, it might be creating a topic that is to be not talked about. And it's important to be able to have these things out in the open and be able to start those conversations. I would recommend, if this is difficult for you as a parent to start this conversation with a child, to perhaps look into family therapy or something along those lines, where you can have a safe setting with somebody who is professional who can mediate that conversation. In addition, with all family therapy, I always recommend that all parties of the family are in their individual therapy as well. So in addition to having a safe place to have that conversation and put it out in the open, each individual has their own support in their individual safe places. So it's important to give your child that voice in addition to getting it out there and talking about the things. There's so many things that are hard to talk about, and if we keep them hidden, if we keep them not talked about, it just creates more anxiety around the topic. I always say that avoidance just breeds more anxiety. If we're avoiding a topic, it's going to just be like, why can't I talk about this? Why is this so dangerous to talk about it? And it reinforces that this is not something to be said. So it's important to just put it out there, have these conversations, and have a space for your child to have these conversations as well.
Thank you so much, Anne. And last, Christina and Trish, to talk about the circle of support.
Thank you. So just to piggyback a little bit on what Anne said, I personally found that thinking about how I was going to discuss my child's disability with him gave me that anxiety. And I kept thinking, okay, when are we going to do this? When are we going to do this? And I happened to have a meeting, and an IEP meeting, and one of the therapists had said to me, you know, your son, well, he had first said to me, no more pullouts. I'm pulled out too much, more push-ins. And I said, how does my son know what a pullout or a push-in? I mean, you're 8. What do you know about a pullout or a push-in? And when we were having that conversation with his team, with his therapists and teachers, they said, well, okay, that's what he's looking at. So when I spoke to one of members of my circle of support, they said, well, he's advocating for himself. He's advocating. He gets it. He's advocating. And I said, you know, wow, just it was that aha moment. So a circle of support is defined as a group of people dedicated to contributing to and reviewing the planning of services and supports needed by the individual to achieve and fulfill the personal ambitions and goals of an individual with a developmental disability. Members of this circle communicate regularly to discover, discuss, and plan the best way to meet the individual's needs and fulfill his or her personal goals. Together, the circle of support creates and documents a life plan for the individual. Now, the circle of support is not just within, let's say, the OPWDD realm. It can be outside of that. If someone doesn't have OPWDD, it's your friends, it's your family, it's anyone who supports, therapists, paras, teachers, whomever is in their lives to support them. Within the OPWDD community, there is the role of the care manager, which I basically call the guidance counselor for life. There's also, if they decide to self-direct, you have your fiscal intermediary, your broker, any type of staff that they may have, and of course, family and friends. And I would say that the circle of support, we've already been developing this as parents or anyone who has a loved one with a disability. It starts very early. It can start an early intervention when you first have that first coordinator, or when you go into that mom group and you are a little bit in denial about what is happening in your life. And when someone is telling you, oh, you know, don't worry, they'll start talking or they'll start walking. And, you know, all of these, we don't realize at the time that this is your circle of support is starting to brew. It's starting to grow. So I say embrace it. I personally, for me, my circle of support seems to grow every single day, especially this year. And I will say, you know, when it comes to care management and care coordination and having OPWDD, always think it doesn't have to just be within these compartments. If someone has a cousin or an aunt, or I've had people have their para come and be part of their circle of support. It can be anybody, it could be a neighbor. Whoever is there to support you should be part of your COS. And I'll let Trish take over here a little bit.
Thanks, Christina. Great points. I think, a circle of support is really important, but it all starts with really good person-centered planning. And when you discuss person-centered planning, it should be respecting the individual, right? And the importance of getting to know the person and recognizing their unique abilities. Everybody has abilities. Treating people with dignity, understanding that they have experiences and goals of their own. And more importantly, to always maintain that confidentiality. If you're meeting as a circle, make sure that, if they have disclosed things, you want to keep their confidentiality, things that they might, if you make them feel that the things they're saying are valid and important, you'll get more from them, and that you've also maintained that confidentiality, and assigning responsibility to them, right? And to the family. And when you're looking at really good person-centered planning, it should be with positive people who can see you succeed, see that you as a family can succeed, the relationships that are there, and proactively strategizing to make you successful. Not, focusing on all the bad things, right? I sometimes feel like that's what happens, is because it's a service-based system, there has to be something wrong. There's nothing wrong with also talking about all the really good things that people can do. And yes, there will be professionals and paid people in your circle, but there should be family and friends, as Christina mentioned, neighbors, definitely people there that can help you. It's about developing relationships and building on your strengths and supporting your needs. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Such wonderful advice. Now we're going to move into just a few words of wisdom before we go into our Q&A section for the evening. If you leave the audience with one key idea or point today, what would you want that to be? And I'm going to let everyone on our panel answer this tonight. And we'll start with Anne.
So what I would like for everybody to do is look into therapeutic services. Even if you feel as if you don't need a therapist, I personally think that everyone needs a therapist. I will disclose right now, I have a therapist. It's really isn't a thing that we have to be embarrassed to say, that therapy is no longer, I hope, is no longer stigmatized. It's important to have this support, even if it is for you as the parent. You give out all of your spoons all day and you deserve something back. I really liked what they said in the movie of taking it one day at a time. It's one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 school year at a time. And also at the end of the film, open your mouth and tell people what you want, and be kind about it. Kindness kills. I really loved that quote from the film. It really hit me. And in addition, I think that in finding a therapist is really hard also. Look through Psychology Today. There aren't a lot of therapists who are trained in working with people with disabilities, and that is a terrible thing in the field. I admit that there's a hole in the field that way. And we are also working to fill that gap. Anxieties happen. Find ways for you to have your supports. Reach out to your circles of supports. And it's important to be that safe adult for your kid. Every person needs a safe person to talk to, and by putting it out in the air, you're that safe person. And your therapist can be that safe person for you too. Also reach out to Sydney. We can help you with all of your other needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And just to let everyone know, please don't worry about copying any of the information on the screen tonight. We will be sharing all of this information in the materials that we send to you after. If you screen cap, that's fine, but you will have all of this information after this panel. Now we'll move on to Christina with Tri-County Care.
So what I would like to leave everyone with this evening is take that front door information session. Might not be for you, however, it may be. There hasn't been anyone that I've ever assisted through the process that has said, I regret taking it or I regret going through the process. They always say, I regret not doing it sooner. So it's very important to set up our loved ones for success, and the earlier, the better. I'm telling you, these services are life-changing. I'm happy to answer any questions. My number and extension are there. Anything, anyone who has any type of trepidation, please reach out. But I would say take that info session, very important. The supports and services are invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Now we'll move into Katie Stanzoni. Katie.
Thank you. So my key idea or point is really, again, that it's never too early to have our children be involved in opportunities to self-advocate. Practice through repeated opportunities is going to tremendously help students to feel more comfortable, to engage in this process and have less of that anxiety that we heard so much about in the documentary, or hesitancy to continue self-advocating as an adult. It's not something new and daunting when it's something we've always been a part of. So again, emphasizing it's never too early, we're never too young, and it's going to look different for everyone because we're all individuals, but whatever that comfort zone is, as early as possible, start there.
Thank you so much, Katie. And Jonathan.
Yeah, just wanted to say that regarding transition, when students are approaching or are at that transition age, I think it's very critical also, no matter what age, right? It's critical that the student and their families and partners actively partner with their school teams to make sure and ensure that that the students or the parent's child is receiving transition services and the supports within the schools that are aligned to the students' wishes, dreams, and what they really want to do. And it's, it's a right? It's the student's right, it's the parents' right, family's right to ask for, to meet with school teams and to get those transition supports and services for post-secondary readiness and for success after high school. It's their right. So please make sure to reach out to your school teams, make sure that you're actively partnering with the school teams as early as possible, because we just want to make sure that every single student and every single one of our parents' children are ready for transition and ready for life after high school. Thank you.
And Trish.
At first, I need to say how much I've learned tonight from listening to all of you. So thank you all. This has been fantastic. I have a few phrases and things that I say often, and most presentations, I now lead with saying, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So planning and strategizing and evolving every day. It starts today and is thought about every day. Transition happens all the time. And self-advocates never feel you cannot speak up for yourself. And you're the reason we are all here. In case anybody needs reminding why we're all here, you're the reason. And never say never to parents, especially parents, never underestimate. If anything, I've realized with helping so many people now transition to independent living, and it really should be called independent living with support. I've seen so many people flourish when they're given the opportunity to take risk. Dignity of risk is so important to all of this. And we as parents, it's heart-stopping sometimes to see what's happening for them and to take that risk. And always do your homework. Never give up learning. You're always going to have new ways to be your best self, as Anne was saying, right? Self-care, as well as individuals, knowing that every day you can learn something new. I learned something new every day, just like I did tonight. I'd never heard of the Deer Man, and I'm going to give that a whirl. So thank you all for this opportunity tonight, and wonderful presentations by everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, give Dear Man a Google. It's a great tool to use in self-advocacy.
Thank you all so much. We're just going to take a short pause for a change in interpretation. Now we'll begin our Q&A portion of the evening. We're going to be answering all the great questions you've submitted throughout the evening, and feel free to continue to add more using the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen. So for the first question, Anne, what happens when your child does not want to talk about the needs that he or she has? If they feel strange or different because they want to fit in socially?
Allowing for that space. So it's important for kids to, you have to meet your child where they're at. And if they don't want to voice their concerns yet, expressing to them that you are there when they want to express these things. You also may notice them expressing their needs in other ways, whether it is through play or through writing or through whatever means they're using. A lot of children are very creative. All children are very creative, honestly. And we have to just tune into the ways of them letting you know what their needs are. It may not be a conversation. It may not be something that you may expect. It might come out of a different field, but tuning into what their needs are based on what they can provide for you. If they want to fit in, asking why, asking what fitting in means to them, asking what that looks like in the day-to-day, maybe some of the details, and finding ways for them to be comfortable in themselves.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, can you share information about the independent workshops that you mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we're going to share the TCAT catalog, which if you click on the link, you're able to see all of the workshops that we provide to not only to schools, but also to students and families. And so you can look at all of the different topics, right? And independent living is one of them as well. What I would recommend is also in the beginning of the TCAT catalog, there's information about each of the offices within the different boroughs, emails, phone numbers, even the websites. So I would highly suggest that that parents look at where there's, depending on what borough they live in, contact their specific TCAC, their specific borough TCAC, and they'll be very happy to do any workshops, whether if it's a group workshop or a personalized workshop. We do personalized one-on-one workshops for students and for families as well. And we also do transition consultancies. So look at the TCAC catalog and absolutely contact your respective borough TCAC, and they'll be very happy to help and assist.
Great, thank you so much. This one's for Christina. Are supports or services based on a parent's income? I often worry that when the time comes, my child won't be eligible for programs or services.
So for a child under the age of 18, the parent's income and resources are waived. We go through a parental deeming process. Again, that's something the CCO could discuss with you when you call them regarding your specific situation. When an individual turns 18, though, it's based on their income, their resources, but there are things that can be put into place: special needs trust, able accounts, pool trusts, whatever it is. So I don't want that to discourage you from looking into the services. There are professionals that can assist in guiding to what would need to be done financially with that future financial planning.
If I can just also chime in there, it's really important to make sure that if somebody does have assets and you're talking to family about, bank accounts and things like that, that they do have a look back period. So you really should, if you're going for Social Security at some point, that's why transition at 14 is so important as well, to really know where you're going so that you're protecting those assets and putting them, like you said, into able accounts or somehow, getting them things out of your child's name before they go for Social Security, because they do look at any assets over $2,000.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, are students attending approved non-public schools eligible to receive pre-ETS from TCAC services?
So that's a great question. I'm going to have to definitely, my email is on the chat, and I could provide my email. I definitely don't want to give the wrong information ever, right? So I would definitely have to take a look into this and look at our specific data and see if there are approved non-public schools that are eligible for pre-ETS. So I would definitely have to circle back regarding that. But the attendee who absolutely asked this question is more than welcome to email me at my email, and I'll definitely will be more than happy to get back. I just want to make sure that I give the right information.
Thank you. Trish or Christina, how often does OPWDD do a reassessment for young adults with different abilities?
Well, for under the age of 8, it's provisional. So anyone who receives an eligibility prior to age 8, depending on when their birthday falls, they will have to be reassessed prior to their 8th birthday a few months before, or at that time their provisional will expire. However, the Disability Review Committee or Medicaid can do audits at any time. So sometimes they might do a 3-5-year audit, just checking, because it's 2 parts there. So as far as OPWDD, my experience, and I can let Trish speak to hers, but usually you have the provisional and the full eligibility. But again, with Medicaid, they do audits for disability reviews. So that would come up usually after the age of 18, and then depending on, again, it can be random. They might ask for a psychological or other evaluation at that point.
Yeah, usually after 21, it's really just based on once you're sort of in, they review doing either DDP2 scores every 2 years now. I think that's Christina, right? It's every 2 years now. It was every year for a little while. And now we're moving into CAS assessments, and for children, it's CANS. We don't know what implementation for that really will look like yet. I don't know if Christina has any information on that as well.
Well, we still don't have the guidance. However, it's supposed to be taking the place of the DDP2s at some point.
Right. So those are the ways to sort of gauge staying into the system and what that looks like through those 2 mechanisms at the moment, once you're sort of past your provisional eligibility and fully served.
Thank you guys so much. Jonathan, a question for you. Can you explain how SYEP works for students with disabilities?
Absolutely. It's a great question. So SYEP, or the Summer Youth Employment Program, so the Department of Education Special Education Office through the Transition and College Access Centers. So we work with the CIDA, who are the leads of this program. And so we have approximately 1,500 slots for students with disabilities. So but prior to this year, it was 1,000. So this year we went up 50%, which is great, because we're able to offer more services to students with disabilities, or more slots. So through SYEP, participants, and especially students with disabilities, can explore different interests and career pathways. They can develop productive workplace habits and engage in learning experiences that not only strengthen their social, civic, but also their leadership skills, and prepares them for work. Also, SYEP offers students with disabilities structured project and work-based learning opportunities. So for students with disabilities, it helps them prepare at the end of the day for careers and for their future. We do work with every single industry partner that our students do intern throughout the summer. We do work with them very closely. Prior to the students starting their internship during the summer, we provide workshops to those industry partners of working with students with disabilities and workplace accommodations. So we're making sure that students are not only gaining valuable work-based learning and career pathways and internship experience, but we also want to make sure that where they're going to intern at, which is aligned to student voice in their IEPs. We want to make sure that our industry partners are not only trained, but also we have that great relationship with them so that they're better prepared to work with our students.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Katie, can you go into some detail about what types of additional assistance students might receive in public schools, such as additional time for test taking or note taking?
Sure. In terms of testing accommodations, there are different categories that most of the testing accommodations would fall under. Those can be flexibility in scheduling and timing, flexibility in the setting that's used for the administration of assessment. So like the location, changes even to the method of how information is presented, and changes to the method of response. In terms of accommodations, instructionally, they would also be in those exact areas. So yes, extended time for responses in the classroom, and that would correlate with the student having that need for extended time on assessments. Use of scribing, use of speech to text, so assistive technology can also be a part of that, or it can be a human person doing that. So a human reader, if a student is getting tests read aloud to them, or it can be done through assistive technology. And again, these would correlate to the needs and accommodations that we provided in the classroom to students as well. That's not an exhaustive list. There are trainings that we offer, and I know that that's in the materials as well. Some of our family-facing trainings on assessments and accommodations, testing accommodations, can give you more information, but just to kind of cover some of it without overwhelming.
Thank you so much. Trish, do you recommend any specific disability lawyers?
No, there are a few out there. I can, if they want to email me separately, I don't think I should just spout out some names here. So my email is in the information. Feel free to reach out to me.
And I know someone said that they were listening and there's so many supports and assistance. How do they find the help? How do they find the supports and assistance? Our panelists gave us some really great resources, and we'll be sharing all of those with you at the end of this panel. Katie, how do we match our children's abilities with what they're able to do? What questions can we ask to keep them engaged in activities and in school?
So really their entry points, if I'm answering it correctly, or if I'm hearing it correctly. So you want to leverage a student's strengths, and we all have strengths. Everyone has strengths. So we want to come from that asset-based model and really their interests. So that can come in conversations, and just knowing your child and being able to be a voice for your child if they're not actively a part of these conversations, and talk to teachers about what their interests are. There's so much information that we gain from conversations with the students and with their parents that we can utilize in the classroom to help keep them engaged, right? Even if it's making a math question have to do with their favorite character or cars, because that's what they enjoy doing. If we could take cars and use those to show what subtraction looks like. So really it's interests and strengths, and how we can leverage those to meet the needs of our students. And that information really comes so much from families and from the students themselves.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, my daughter is 20 years old. Can she still access this aids for independence and education?
So if the student is a registered NYC DOE student, absolutely yes. But I also want to emphasize the fact that the transitioning college access centers who that are in each borough. Yes, we work with students, and there are students who are up to the age of 21, right, in the Department of Education. But if there are students or young adults who are no longer part of the Department of Education, no longer students, the Transitioning College Access Centers are still available to support. We are a community and resource hub for student and peoples with disabilities. So just if the child or the young adult has transitioned to out of the Department of Education or out of the schools, they're more than welcome to come back, and we will do one-on-one transition consultancies. We will help guide them with career and technical education programs, vocational programs, different colleges. So we do support any person with a disability within New York City.
Thank you so much. We're just going to pause shortly for an interpretation break. The next question is for Christina. I appreciated all of what you said about self-direction, but many parents are the ones who actually manage the budget. Do you have any suggestions or know of any good models for sustainability for a person with a disability who can't manage it all on their own as they get older?
Well, their broker and their fiscal intermediary should be able to assist with that. As long as that's in the broker agreement. I mean, Trish, you can go ahead, but.
Yeah. So there's things in the budget too. There's staffing support line in a budget that families can access someone who can do all of your reimbursements for you, some of your staffing needs. We also talk about what we are starting to look at, an enhanced broker who has a very small caseload, who can maybe help assist with more of the day-to-day things. Super broker, enhanced broker. But there are some things that, are being discussed now, but these are some lines in a budget. And always remember that when you are interviewing a broker, these are some of the questions you want answered. And if they do not want to provide that service, they don't have to, then you move on. That's the beauty of self-direction. You have choice. You have choice in your broker, you have choice in your FI, you have choice in your staffing. So utilize that to the best of your ability to find people who will do the things that you maybe need some support in yourself. It's just some suggestions there.
And you also can have a backup broker. You can have more than one broker. I'm a broker also, and I will tell you that, backup brokers are key for a lot of families, and they handle their paperwork, their monthly paperwork.
Right. So you have one broker that doesn't want to do it, but you can co-broker with somebody. The only issue with co-brokering is the two brokers cannot be working at the same time, or they'll have to be one of them will have to be unpaid if they agree to talk at the same time. So that's one of the unfortunate caveats, because it's a duplication of service. So you have to be careful when you're accessing backup brokers and how that looks.
Thank you all so much. I know we are nearing 7:30, but before we end our evening together, I'm going to turn it over briefly to my colleague, Roberta, for a couple of last minute speaking points, and then we'll turn it over to JC to launch that poll that we mentioned in the beginning. So, Roberta.
Mary Beth, I can't start my video. I think you guys have to do it.
Roberta,
Got it.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. First of all, to my colleagues that have worked on this project for over just about a year now, thank you for your commitment to our families. To our panelists, you took on the Herculean task of making that cliff manageable for our families, our self-advocates, and the professionals that work with them. So we thank you for that. You took on many, if not all, of the issues that were raised, and We greatly appreciate that. For our community partners that are listed in the resources that you will receive that helped us with sharing their experiences, brought us in tune to cultural awareness and responsiveness to those cultural matters that impact families that are going through transition. We thank you, and also thank you for your dedication to our project, because without your assistance with translation of resources and providing translation tonight, we greatly appreciate that. To the professionals on this call, our self-advocates and our families have bared in the film project their souls, and I think they did that in a very brave and honest manner. So transition is not anything that any of us take lightly, but hopefully they help bring into your focus, your perspective, those many components inside and outside of the school setting that are of concern to those families. Trish, I do want to echo the dignity of risk. Myself and several colleagues on this call were at a youth panel convening this weekend, and the youth advocates highlighted the dignity of risk and the fact that we as parents, as difficult as it is, and I am the parent of a 25-year-old young man who's in the stages of self-direction and transition, moving out this weekend. It's scary, but I have to presume competence, and that's the second part. Trisha's laughing because she's a huge part of that. The presumption of competence. We have to presume that they can do it. And that's a really scary thing for parents to think about. And for self-advocates, but we have to put that wind beneath their wings, if you will. To our self-advocates, there were hours and hours of video, of interviews. Not everybody made it to the final film, but that doesn't mean that you didn't inform us and that you didn't take part in this project. Without you and without your families, we couldn't have done this. And hold on, I'm sorry, guys. I wrote this out so that I wouldn't get flustered, and here I am flustered. Nobody's at a cliff. Nobody's at that proverbial cliff without support. So when Kim Madden, one of my colleagues, took on the role and the task of putting together all of the resources, I must say it was Herculean, and she did a great job. So you're going to be receiving that. JC, I think you want to launch the poll now, but we hope that tonight we were able to provide for you all an idea or a view of handing over those reins, because it's important, because as we who are parents here today have pointed out, someday we're not going to be here and we're not going to be doing this. And we have to provide the circles, the supports, and the resources necessary to allow our kids, our individuals, our self-advocates to live the most full and independent lives possible. So hopefully this project helped with that. I can't believe it's a year over right now. JC is going to put a poll in the chat. Mary Beth, I'm not sure if I left anything out. Hopefully I didn't. Thank you to everyone.